Welcome on in, everybody, to the All Aussie Rules YouTube channel. This is our Carlton Blues 2024 review video. As each team gets knocked out, we've been doing a review of their season, what went right, what went wrong, numbers behind their season. Was it a pass? Was it a fail? We look into it all. We've done the bottom 10 teams. We're now moving into the teams that made finals, Carlton Blues Elimination Finals loser. So that first, we've got Bulldogs coming out later this week, and then next week we'll have the semi-final losers. So stick around, check it all out. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Check out all the content. There's plenty of videos every day. At the moment, we're doing at least pretty much a video a day. There's 6+ videos a week. It's pretty heckers, pretty crazy, but check it all out. Plenty of content. Also, plenty of social medias. We're at All Aussie Rules everywhere, so go check all of that out. Without any further ado, let's jump into the Carlton Blues 2024. Their home and away season finished up with 13 wins, 10 losses, 0 draws, and in 8th spot, they just snuck into the 8. They then obviously played finals and went to the Gabba and lost to Brisbane. So overall, probably not the most successful season for them. Not compared to what they were wanting. We'll go into game by game and have a look at what happened. And as you can see, started plenty of green, a little bit of red there through weeks 5 to 10, then plenty of green again before lots of red at the end. Game by game, started the year really well. Didn't turn up in the first quarter, but after that, went and beat Brisbane at the Gabba by a point in an absolute cracker. Snuck over the line against the Richmond Tigers in round 1. Richmond played really well that day and Carlton did not, but Carlton got the 4 points. They then beat North Melbourne comfortably at Marvel, beat Fremantle just over at Adelaide Oval in Gather Round, before losing to Adelaide at Marvel, which was the first sign of danger, I guess, for Carlton's season. They then beat GWS at Marvel before losing to Geelong and then Collingwood over rounds 7 and 8. Beat Melbourne by a point in just sneaking over the line in that one before getting pumped by Sydney by 52 points after leading by more than 4 goals in the first quarter. And at this point, they'd only won 2 of their last 6 games, and it was looking a little bit dangerous and a little bit like it could get out of hand. But they kind of resurrected themselves here. Before the bye, they beat Gold Coast, Port Adelaide, and then the Bombers at the MCG to go into the bye. So all of a sudden got their season back going. Came out of the bye and beat Geelong and Richmond. And at this point, they're sitting second on the ladder. Everyone's wondering how far they win by because their fourth quarter performances especially were really good at this point. And yeah, they were looking like a team that was going places. And then they went up against GWS up in Sydney. And they looked the winner of that too. They were 5 goals up in the first quarter, and then GWS just came back, fought back, and ended up winning it by 12 points. So Carlton dropped that one. They then dropped the next week against the Bulldogs at Marvel before beating Kangaroos at Marvel, losing to Port Adelaide, Collingwood for the second time that year, then got pumped, absolutely pumped by Hawthorn. They then went over to the West in a must-win game for them and beat West Coast. Final round was pretty much they win, they go through. If they lose, then they potentially miss out on finals. Lost one of the all-time classics. It was an absolute ripper to St Kilda by 2 points. But luckily for them, in terms of making finals, Fremantle choked in the final game of the season, which put Carlton through in 8th spot, and an elimination final with Brisbane at the Gabba, which Brisbane won by 28 points after being 10 goals up in the second quarter. So, not the best finish to Carlton's season. For the second year in a row, they've been eliminated by Brisbane at the Gabba, so a little bit disappointing for them in terms of that. From where they were, second on the ladder after round 16, kind of like Collingwood and Essendon, and even Fremantle, fell away in the last 10 weeks. Fremantle was the last 4 weeks, but the other 3, last 8 to 10 weeks, really fell off the cliff and cost themselves. Yeah, they had some injuries. We'll look at that shortly. And plenty of excuses, I guess, like that. But at the end of the day, They only have themselves to blame. Coming from a prelim last year to get knocked out in an elimination final the way they did is probably a sign that this was maybe a fail of a season in terms of what they were probably expecting. Certainly, after 16 weeks, they would have been expecting a lot more than an elimination final thumping. Looking at the numbers across the last 3 years, as you can see, pretty steady, I guess, really. 12 wins in 22, 13 wins and a draw in 23, 13 wins in 24. So pretty similar across the board there. Finishing 9th in 22, 5th in 2023, and then going on to play in a prelim. Obviously, winning an elimination final and then a semi-final was really successful year, I guess, for Carlton last year, whereas this year they just snuck into the 8. It was a really tight season across the board, really. Snuck into finals and fell short. You look at the players used. 2022 they used a lot. That's 40 is well above average. 37 is still above average, both of those years. So have been using quite a lot of players. Age-wise, they have been slowly getting older. They are approaching now one of the older teams in the competition. Collingwood, I think, is number one oldest team this year, was 27.5, so they're still a fair way off that, but they're probably in the top 6 teams in terms of age. Experience, they're up to 92 games average, so that's getting on as well. It's not nowhere near danger signs, like they've still got plenty of years in a lot of their guns, but they certainly are starting to develop into one of the more senior teams across the board. Look at some of the stats from this year. Obviously, there's a lot of numbers here. Not all of them are important. We won't highlight them all. It's just a sign of show you where they're at, what's been going on. You look at their point differential. Hasn't changed much over the last 3 years, plus 6.5 to plus 9.8, back down to plus 8.65. So pretty steady across the board there. I think a major factor this year as to why they did look so good in the end was their accuracy. 53.5% is well above what they'd been doing the last couple of years. I think second or third in terms of the AFL, the whole competition for accuracy. So that was a massive improvement from them. Disposals wise, stayed about the same. Nothing too exciting there. Inside 50s, interestingly, has got worse and worse as they've got better. They've gone from plus 3 in 2022 down to minus 0.9 this season. So it's, inside 50s is not the most important stat in the world. It's important because you obviously want the ball in your forward line, but teams can win it without winning the inside 50 count. Metres gained has certainly been improving though, which is interesting, seeing that they're not getting the inside 50 domination, but that probably suggests that maybe the other teams are getting repeat inside 50s, whereas that's kind of how Carlton used to play with the repeat inside 50s, whereas now that get the ball in and it gets out a little bit easier maybe. Next up we have turnover game has stayed pretty similar. Overall slightly ahead of the 8 ball, plus 0.9 in terms of intercepts this year. Last year was plus 1.5 as the year before was. So pretty solid across the board, slightly down this year but not anything to be too concerned about. Contested football, they are probably the best contested football team in the competition. Has dropped from plus 13 down to plus 7.5, but I still would consider them the number one team in terms of that. Uncontested footy's dropped a little bit as well, but still pretty solid. Same for hardball gets, loose ball gets. Clearances, centre clearances, they're slightly above average, and then stoppage clearances, they're pretty solid at in the top 5 or 6 teams. Their forward efficiency this year was really good at 49.2% is a really high number, but their defensive efficiency probably not great. And then outside of that, I don't think there's anything too exciting in those bottom few stats. I think the major thing here, their offense certainly improved this year. There's no doubt about that. But I think their defense also kind of dropped off. they really struggled, certainly in the second half of the season, to stop oppositions from scoring against them. At the end of the day, conceding 85 points per game is going to make it very difficult to win a lot of games, because it's just logical. Most teams in the top 8 were conceding around about 75 to 80 points per game. So they're a little bit off the top teams in terms of defensive scoring, whereas offensively they certainly were in the top few, but maybe that was exaggerated by the amount of high-scoring games they had. They had quite a few. Certainly, just after the bye, they scored 138, then 131, 2 weeks in a row. Overall, they had 3 scores of over 130 for the season. And then they had the score of 38 against Hawthorn, which lowers it right down, I guess. In round 22, that happened. Look now at their scoring sources across the last 3 years. Kick-ins stayed about the same offensively, but dropped a point defensively. Stoppages is probably the big killer for them this year. They offensively slightly improved, in all honesty, but that defensively, going from 25.3 points against from stoppages, which is a really good number, to 38 is not a good number. So that's a drop-off of 2 goals extra that they're conceding from stoppages this year. So a little bit of a concern that. Whereas turnovers, they improved massively from, certainly offensively, +9. Defensively, they also improved by a little bit. So they gained a bit from turnovers, but what they gained from turnovers, they kind of lost from stoppages. And then from whereabouts on the ground, they won the ball to score. Defensive half transition, both offensively and defensively, has stayed about the same. It was the forward half that changed both offensively and defensively for them. +8 offensively, +11 or -11, I guess you'd say, defensively. Defensively from the forward half, and then the centre clearances, slight improvement for them offensively, but also slightly down in defensively, scores from centre bounces. So interesting, I guess. Mainly that stoppages number was the big change, I guess, from last season to this season in a negative sense. But they were much better from the turnover. There's no doubt about that. So there's a bit of give, there's a bit of take. Overall, maybe that ability to stop opposition from scoring from stoppages is the number that's probably the biggest concern for them of all the numbers we've looked at today. We'll jump now into some of the players. Let me just adjust this a little bit so you can see it all. These are players that have missed 5+ games. Not all of them are first 23 players, but they're all role players that would be getting games to fill in holes of other people. Obviously, the big one, Sam Doherty, missed 22 games, 22 and a half really. Did his ACL halfway through the first game. Actually, not even that. In the first quarter, he played a bit of the second quarter, but then subbed out at half-time. And then we didn't see him again for the home and away season, but he returned in a surprise return for the elimination final. So he missed all but 2 games. Jack Martin missed 21. Cunningham, 19. Jesse Motlop, 17. Adam Serra had a good year, but he missed 11. Mark Pittenay missed 10. Cottrell, 10. Jack Carroll, Lockie, Fogarty and Orazio Fantasia all missed 9. Gincotta missed 8. Lockie Cowan missed 7. And Sard, McGovern and De Koning all missed 6. And then Jordan Boyd and Zach Williams missed 5 each. So quite a lot of games across a lot of variety of positions really. Certainly their mid-sized players were the ones that probably copped the most between medium forwards and medium defenders. They certainly missed quite a lot of football this year. We'll now have a look at the highest rated AFL/Champion Data rated players for the season by position. Starting with key defenders, Jacob Wiedering really solid year again. Slightly down on last year's rating, but overall I think was very similar output to last year. Brody Kemp had an okay year, slightly down again on last year, but still pretty solid. Lewis Young only played the 9 games, but was pretty solid in those 9 games without being outstanding. Key forwards, Charlie Curnow was down on last year. There's no doubt about that. Last year's Coleman medalist, I think he ended up runner-up, did he, this year? Or did, I can't remember if Jeremy Cameron passed him. I think Jeremy Cameron might have passed him in that last week. Overall down on last year's output, though. Still solid year, very good year in terms of key forwards. He's still in the top probably 3 tall forwards in the competition this year, but certainly wasn't up to last year's level. Meanwhile, Harry Mackay was pretty much the opposite. He showed a very good year. I think the main difference, overall his numbers are probably pretty similar, except for kicked a few more goals, and I think that's mainly due to the fact that he was kicking a lot straighter this year. The last 2 years before this one, he'd really struggled with accuracy in front of goal, whereas this year he was a lot better in that facet overall. He still missed a few here and there, but certainly was a lot more improved on what he had been showing. Medium defenders, Adam Sard gave us what we expect from him. He was good, much the same as last year. Nick Newman, he was really good, didn't miss a game, played a good season. Zach Williams obviously missed all of last year with a knee injury. Played that medium defender role most of the season. He did rotate forward mid-season for a few games here and there. Solid output from him returning from a knee injury. Mitch McGovern, he plays medium defender / key defender. He's a bit of both. Solid year without being outstanding. Lachlan Cohen played a good year compared to last year for him. Gin Cotter missed a fair bit of football, slightly down on last year. Jordan Boyd also missed a fair bit of football, slightly up on last year, but much the same rating overall. The medium forwards, Elijah Hollins, he was the big improver. Obviously, first year on the list for Carlton, he was outstanding. There's no doubt about it. I think he was their best that size forward wing sort of role. Did everything he needed to, and probably slightly overperformed on what maybe Carlton were expecting from him from the start of the year. Lockie Fogarty was really good as well. Ui's had his games where he was really good. Still struggles a little bit with consistency, but overall was a medium-sized small forward. Pretty decent across the board in relative terms to similar size and role players in the AFL. Fantasia was good, improved on what his output for his last season at Port Adelaide was last year. Cunningham only played the 5 games, didn't show a heap, but wasn't terrible. A few mid-forwards for Carlton. Matthew Kennedy didn't miss a game, pretty much the same output as last year. Cottrell, he was okay, slightly improved on last year, and same can be said for Jack Carroll. We jump into the midfield line. Paddy Grips didn't miss a game. Absolutely outstanding season from him. Led from the front. Tried to carry them across the line there towards the end of the season. No doubt about it that he's top 3 midfielders in the competition right now, I think. Will he get another Brownlow? It's quite possible. He's certainly going to be in the top 3 or 4, you would imagine. Potentially winning another one this year would be a really fantastic effort from him. I think he did everything he could this year. He was a very, very good player across the board, or every week basically. He had very few down games. Sam Walsh missed the start of the season, but then I think he played the last 20 games. Really good year from him. Improved on last year, still improving. Like, he's a very young player. Has the trajectory to probably end up somewhere at a 15 or 16 rated season next year, so that would be huge for Carlton if he did develop like that. George Hewitt, he was really good this year as well, improved on last year's output. Adam Serra, he was the reverse, slightly dropped a little bit. Missed a fair bit of football, but he was still pretty solid. Blake Acres, only missed the one game. Really good on the wing this year. Slightly down on AFL ratings to last year, which is interesting. I think he was probably better this year. He's probably in the top 4 rated wingmen in the competition this year. Obviously, Errol Goulden's number 1. I think the next 3 this year were pretty much similar. Those are Massimo D'Ambrosio, Blake Acres, and Josh Dacos. I think we're all similar rated and similar sort of numbers as that next tier of wingman, but a fair way off Errol Goulden, who's just by far the number 1 wingman in the competition. Cooper Lord only played the 2 games, but showed a little bit in those 2 games. Same can be said for Jackson Biggs, who only played 3. Oliver Hollands, he was okay without being outstanding. Then the 2 ruckmen, I think this is where Carlton probably need to work out what they want to do with their ruckman. Mark Pitterno played 14 games, was pretty good in all honesty. Had a really good season, but so did Tom De Koning, who played about 18 games and apparently was sub in their elimination final. Is he better as the standalone ruckman? Is he better as another tall? I think it's going to be interesting what they do, because obviously if they play both of those, they've got a very tall lineup with Curnow, Harry Mackay in the forward line. But yeah, I don't know what the best best lineup for Carlton is in terms of that. But certainly something they maybe need to look at next year. Players that were on their list / playing games last year that weren't there this year. First up, Ed Curnow, obviously retired last year. Didn't have much of a season. Certainly wasn't in their best 23 anymore. So yeah, he's retired. Paddy Dow went to St Kilda. That number, he could have been handy for them, there's no doubt about it, but gave a similar output at St Kilda. Zach Fisher, same can be said, would have certainly been a role player for them this year based on what we've seen, but yeah, he's at North Melbourne. Didn't have a great year, but had a solid year. And Lockie Plowman, obviously retired as well, wasn't really a member of their best 23, maybe not even part of their best 30 anymore. So he was retired. When I say he was retired, he did retire. I don't know if he was forced to retire. That's certainly not what I was implying. But that's Carlton Blues 2024. Overall, probably a bit disappointing for them based on what their beliefs were as a club, I guess, at the start of the year, and even where their beliefs were after round 16. They would have certainly been hoping that they would have gone a lot deeper into September. I think at the start of the year, a prelim final was probably a pass. Anything below a prelim final was probably a fail, in all honesty, based on where they've been. Maybe they just overperformed last year. I mean, they still only finished 5th on the ladder last year, and they just were rolling come September, whereas this year was the exact opposite. They kind of limped into finals, and in a close competition, you don't want to be limping when it comes to September. You need to be hitting your straps at full force. There's no doubt about it. Look at Hawthorn this year. They've hit their finals absolutely tearing, and now they have a really strong opportunity to go to a prelim final, if not even a grand final, which is crazy to say. So Carlton, what do I think about them? Where do I see them next year? They've still got a lot of talent on their list. It'll be interesting to see what, if any, changes they make to their lineup throughout the off-season, through the trade period, through the draft period. I'm not hugely worried about much for them because they have 2 of the best key forwards in the competition, for starters. They have one of the top 3 midfielders in Paddy Cripps. Sam Walsh is probably top 15 midfielder in the competition. So those areas are fine. They've got Wiedering, who's an All-Australian backman. I'd have him probably top 4 or 5 key backmen. I don't know if I have him top 3. So they've got that core that is really, really good. It's just going to be a matter of putting that all together. I think, as I've kind of noted a couple times, defensively they need to improve on what they showed this year. They conceded too many points throughout the year, but especially from stoppages, as we pointed out, and towards that end of the season, they were really struggling to stop the opposition from scoring quite regularly, in all honesty. So I think that's kind of where they're at. They need to work out a way to, over the off season, whether that's game plan, whether it's changing roles, I'm not sure. I'd say probably more game plan, to come up with ways to stop the opposition scoring so much. You'd rather be scoring 90 points per game and only conceding 75 than scoring 95 a game and conceding 86. It's just logical. So I think even if they lose a couple points offensively, they will want to be conceding probably one to two goals less next year than they did this year. I think if they want to make a serious run at top 4 and a crack at a premiership, which they're certainly still in the window of. I see them as a top 4 team next year. I think that they don't fall over like they did this year, but at the same time, it's a very close competition. So if you don't improve, you are going to fall very quickly down the ladder. So we'll see what comes over their off-season. Let me know down in the comments below where you see Carlton finishing next year. As I said, I think they're top 4 team. Whether that's first, second, third or fourth, I don't know. But I think they are a top 4 team next year. We'll see. But as I said, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment. Check out all the socials at All Aussie Rules everywhere. This has been another episode. Plenty more content on the channel all week, this week, next week, last week, every week. Check it all out. Thanks for watching. Catch us on the next one.